Hey, are you looking for strategies on how to manage your mental health given the current circumstances? Well, in today's episode of the Green Boater TV, we are going to speak with Professor Steve Joordens, who has developed an online course called Mind Control: Managing Your Mental Health During COVID-19. We are pleased to have Dr. Steve Joordens with us. Just a little bit of an intro. Steve Joordens is a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, where he has taught since 1995. He has earned a doctorate in cognitive psychology from the University of Waterloo. He is a frequent speaker at professional conferences and has authored many articles on human memory, consciousness, and attention in empirical and theoretical psychology journals. Professor Joordens earned both the Premier's Research Excellence Award and the National Technology Innovation Award. His teaching skills have also earned him repeated honors, including the President's Teaching Award, the Scarborough College Students' Union Best Professor Award, a provincially sponsored Leadership and Faculty Teaching Award, and 4 nominations for television's Ontario's Best Lecturer competition. Most recently, Dr. Joordens created a free online course to manage mental health amid COVID-19. Professor Joordens, welcome and thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you. I really enjoy being here. Do we have time left now for, yeah, maybe later.
Professor Joordens, so many in our community are in lockdown, isolated, away from home, unable to be with family and friends. We've been told to practice social distancing, but you have a different term. What is it?
Yeah, no, I think it should be physical distancing. The idea is we want to stay physically apart, but in fact, socially, this is a time to do anything but distance. It's a time to probably, reach out and reestablish old relationships, connect with people. I mean, we're all very anxious. One of the best sort of insulators to our anxiety is through our social connections, and especially if they're happening at an emotional level. So not just surface, don't just fire somebody a text. Pick up the phone maybe, or Zoom or something if you're so inclined, and reach out and really see the person's face, hear their voice, and have that human-to-human connection, because that really is important to us now.
Well, and it's so interesting too, most millennials now, they use their phone, this thing, to connect. And we think, well, we're not being connected. Now is the time, actually, this device could actually aid in this whole area of staying connected socially while we're physically apart.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes worry about the people who don't have any of these devices now, the older people who are alone that are not so internet savvy, because this is our lifeline now. And I do think we're going to have to change how we use it. I think one of the reasons people have liked social media is it allows us to do little shortcut interactions as though we're actually paying attention to somebody and care. We can quickly click a like or reshare, and that feels like something to them. But at a time like this, that's not going to do it. We really do need to connect human to human. So we can do that with these platforms. And I think we're going to have to learn, people are going to have to learn that their smartphone is a phone. That's part of what it does and what it allows, and that it's actually a very powerful feature. But it's not normal for millennials. It's not how they use these technologies.
No, and we're all in a new era of fear and new things coming at us that are out of control. So let's talk about that. Everybody has a degree of fear of contracting the virus, the impact on our physical health. But how real is the impact on our mental health?
Yeah, and so, I mean, when we think about the fear, there is the physical virus, but there's also, like, my daughter's a bartender. She hasn't worked for a long time. She and her partner, who's also in the service industry, just bought a new house. Sorry, they're renting a new house. They're not going to be able to pay rent. I mean, and so there's a lot of people who just, we have our government saying, don't worry about it, we're going to kind of cover, but there's the health worries, the economic worries, and the fact, I mean, to our brain, I think the biggest annoyance is the brain can't predict what's going to happen next. And the brain has all these routines for predicting the future and making us feel comfortable when our predictions are accurate. We can't predict anything. And so to our brain, this is a real strong form of I don't know, fear would be one word, but just the uncertainty of it makes the brain kind of confused and makes it anxious, and it wants us to fight or flee from whatever is causing this situation. And of course, the problem with COVID is we can't seem to flee from it. I wonder if there were one place in the world where it couldn't reach, we would all be there. And fighting it, I mean, I think that's a big part of my message, is that we have to understand that some of the things we are doing are fighting it. They might not seem like they're fighting it in a very direct way, but they are. And I think one of the things we have to kind of get our head around is that, you know, by staying home, by doing these sorts of things, we are actually actively reducing the growth of this virus, which I think of like a monster. And that is one way that the healthcare professionals are taking it on head on. But we're doing our part to try to keep it small enough so that they can actually take it head on. And that is a very important role.
You know, even though the symptoms of a carrier aren't recognized, certainly when they get ill, they're recognized, but the symptoms of mental illness surrounding this aren't visible. And so even in people in lockdowns in some countries, you can't go out unless you get an armband or stamp or you look sick, but you can't get out. I mean, if you've contracted the mental illness for Corona, you can't go get treated. So help us understand some of the warning signs to recognize in ourselves, for the boating community, in their crew, our friends or family members, those who are sharing this physical isolation with. What are some of the warning signs of this impact of mental illness with Corona?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I want to start with is, use that word mental illness, and we think of illness, we can think of it as something like cancer, something that certain people get but other people don't have. And really, I don't think that's the right analogy for mental health. I think a lot of the issues people face, especially around anxiety and depression, are really, they arise from the machinery. And so the feelings people are feeling right now arise from part of our system that evolved for dealing with immediate threats. Something jumps out in front of us, we have to fight it or flee it. And so we get feelings like increased heart rate, increased breathing, maybe a dryness of mouth, and a general feeling of energy. And that energy comes with this sort of strong mandate of do something about the situation. And so what many of us feel is what anxious people can feel pretty regularly, just this sort of stirring of our body's energized, and we feel like we should be doing something, and we don't necessarily know what to do. And so that really isn't mental illness. We haven't caught a cancer. That's just our system doing what it does. It's a very normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. And so I think one of the advantages is we all feel that now, and maybe this will be demystified a little bit. And there are ways to control the machinery, which is what my course is really meant to kind of, give people an informed approach to dealing with this situation. And more important than that, we have to learn. This is a time when we can learn and kind of need to learn how to control our machinery, because if we let it just go rampant, our immune system gets worn down. And, obviously that's the last thing we want now. And it can also morph into depression. And depression is worse than anxiety. And so, learning about anxiety, kind of learning how it works, embracing it, and then how to manage it, critical right now. And maybe just a good opportunity for us to take that time to kind of, learn about ourselves and learn how we can control our minds a bit more.
You mentioned fight or flee in the sphere, and one of the dynamics I was thinking about is, if I see, say, a dog chasing me, I'm going to flee, right? I have that immediate reaction, problem solved. We're now being told that this lockdown, this dynamic of our life could last 3-4 months.
Yeah.
What's the long-term impact here?
Yeah. So, I mean, the honest answer is we don't know. As a scientific community, we don't know. Just as we hear from the medical community, we've had studies of isolation but they're always different. So solitary confinement in jail, we know that if people are in solitary for too long, they have a lot of emotional issues. And eventually the most extreme thing is they really lose their sense of self. And just to kind of unpack that a little bit, as we imagine our day before all of this hit, we would wake up and we would have a certain structure to our day. We would typically go through certain steps that could involve commutes or going for coffee with certain people. We would interact with certain other people. Every time we interact with somebody, they kind of remind us who we are. We kind of see ourselves reflected in their eyes. And when suddenly we lose our structure of our life and we lose those interactions, we can find ourselves, dare I use this analogy, like a boat without an anchor, which maybe makes more sense to a lot of your community. Just kind of drifting without any direction, and not really kind of knowing what we're about. And so if this is going to become a new norm, we have to get a new self, in a sense, in that place. We have to rediscover who we are. In situations where work has been removed, like a service industry, then it might involve, literally adding some things to your life that you never had time for before. Maybe learning some new skill set, maybe picking up a musical instrument, which is great, both from the learning perspective, but also from just the stress of being able to play a musical instrument, learning how to sing. I'm a big fan of singing. But yeah, in the course, there's a whole section on dealing with isolation and how you can structure your isolation to still kind of, stay on an even keel, I guess. One of the things, by the way, that we've already talked about that I would add to that structure is social interactions. Like, we're so used to every day having these little interactions with people. So maybe we have to use Zoom, or maybe we have to use our phone. But to have regular little stops in the day when we talk to somebody, good for them to have that connection, good for us, and it just kind of reminds us who we are, and it just kind of gives us that sense of identity and preserving that. That's part of the tricky thing of this isolation situation.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the course.
Yeah.
I learned about it just 2 days ago, and I've since signed up, and I've almost completed the first week. But I just wanted to ask you, first of all, what made you create this course?
Yeah, so for whatever reason, I know a lot about psychology, and when this started for me, I guess 3 weeks ago, I've been in isolation because I was in New Orleans at a conference, and so when I got back, isolation. But reporters started coming to me with questions, and you can give reporters answers, but they always want quick answers. So, what are some tips you'd give? And I'd give these tips, but I always felt like these tips make more sense if a person understands why they make sense. And so after a little bit and struggling to find the things I talked about, what am I going to do with my new life? I'm at home all the time. And how can I find purpose? And how can I do something that I started to get the sense of creating this course. I'd created a course on Coursera before, just an intro psych course. So I knew some people there, and I was able to connect and say, hey, if I'll put the time into creating it, can I use your platform to do this? And they gratefully said yes, even though they're not making any money off of this either. And so the whole purpose was to really try to make people understand what anxiety is, how it comes about, to demystify the whole concept. That's mostly chapter 1, show them how to control that anxiety response. But then in the week 2, we talk about things too, like the environment, things like watching the news. Why do we get addicted to the news at this time, and why is that bad for our mental health? And what should we be doing? How should we be consuming the news? But also, what are other things we could be doing? For example, learning something where we feel like we have purpose, where we wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to go to week 2 of that course and accomplish something. And so that was the whole idea, to try to just, when people leave the course, what I hope they do is they look at their life and they understand the anxiety response, and they understand what feeds it, what makes it go away, how they can control it, and then they can make really informed decisions about how they deal with the new world, whatever that new world is for us.
The course is called Mind Control, Managing Your Mental Health During COVID-19. And for our listeners, we will be including links on all of our social platforms so you can get access to it. It's free. But tell me about mind control. What is are we talking Jedi kind of thing? What's going on?
Yeah, I was kind of actually had that sort of, I remember watching Star Wars, and there was one where Luke finally has matured as a true Jedi, and he can go in and do his little mind tricks on other people and sort of control other people through his mind. What I was thinking is most of us don't even know how to control ourselves using our mind. And so this was meant to be sort of, let's learn some Jedi mind tricks, but let's apply them to ourselves. It's that whole body-mind interaction, which is fascinating. Hans Selye started this work on stress long ago, and his work was really important because he showed something cognitive like stress, worrying about your boss, actually has physical repercussions on your body. It can, affect your immune system. So these two are like this, they interact, but usually we just let them kind of run rampant, and we can get in there. Our conscious will can get into that loop and kind of change the direction of where things are going. And so that's what I really wanted people to kind of learn, that skill set, and then take that forward and be better able to deal with, all the stress and anxiety we have, because again, this is a mental illness. This is a rational reaction. There's danger out there, and we want to do something about it. It's just a challenging danger.
What I appreciate, I started the course last night and I almost went through the first week, but I got stuck on the highlight of the whole package, which was an audio portion where you walk through a very practical set of sequences to relax your body. So you can use your body physically to actually start changing your mindset.
Yeah, yeah, and sort of vice versa in that reciprocal loop. So yeah, let's use that as an example. And let's just say, if normally if we want to relax ourselves, we might put on relaxing music or listen to waves or something like that. And that rhythmically we're allowing the stimulus to kind of take us somewhere. Guided relaxation is different. It's a much more, I know you said you fell asleep to it, which is not normally the goal, but the typical idea is, and let's just demystify, let me just start by telling people the version I use. There are other versions online, but it involves just asking someone to lay down and then working through their body from their feet to the tip of their head, muscle group at a time, and just saying, start with your feet. Let's say, clench that foot muscle like it was a fist and clench it hard, and hold it. So for a while, I keep saying, hold it really hard, make sure it's painful, blah, blah, blah. And then the critical part comes when you say, okay, now let it go. And as you're letting it go, feel, like, attend to that. Use your awareness to attend to that feeling of stress leaving your body and what that feels like and what the relaxation feels like that's left. The whole notion is kind of, if you want to go somewhere mentally, you have to know where you're going. You have to kind of have visited that place and attended to it. And so we work all through the body, muscle group by muscle group. And after about 10 minutes, you feel like spaghetti. You may fall asleep if it's late in that, and that's not a bad thing. But you feel really, really relaxed. And if you can pay attention to that, you usually associate it with a word, some sort of trigger for yourself. I like the word beach, but it can be whatever you like. And then it's kind of like playing guitar or something like that. It's not enough to do it once. I mean, that will show you, but you want to visit this place regularly. You want to keep going back to it. If you go back to it enough, you can eventually get to a point where you can just use that trigger word and you feel your body, you feel all that tension, something's got you worked up, and you can just sort of let it drain again, just like you've learned how to do. And that becomes that sort of powerful Jedi mind trick that, even I'll throw this example that some people may have known. It's the one that's always in my mind. Obama doing his State of the Union address several years ago. Imagine the most powerful man in the world in front of all of these people, with millions of people watching, and some dude at the back screams out at him, "You lie." And you think, well, what would you do in that situation? And you can see his face. He starts to look at that, and he's about to say something that probably the media would have a field day with. But then you see the Jedi mind trick. You see him look that way, and then he just kind of turns away, he laughs it off, and he continues, and he's cool. I mean, that's really what we mean by cool, not letting somebody or something get your emotions to the point where the emotions win. You showing, no, I feel that emotion, but I can push it backwards, and I can take control of this machinery that's us. And that's what the guided relaxation is meant to help people achieve, to work towards that tool. And it's a very powerful tool. It doesn't keep it away. And that's where the environmental triggers come in. You can banish that anxiety, but if you wake up in the morning and turn on the news, it'll be back. It's not like you can just make it always go away forever, but you can turn it off at times and then use other things to help maintain your mindset.
I like the idea of not believing that this is a one-shot deal. You go through your course, maybe you give us a certificate and you say, now you're good to go. You actually have to apply this. And I think, I don't know what the other 9 chapters are like, but certainly the first chapter was very applicable, and it wasn't considered to me academia. It was more like, here's some practical tips and tricks. So what else can I look forward to in the next 9 weeks? I want to continue, but I think I might get stuck on the audio. I'll be asleep.
Well, that's the most powerful. I mean, I would say that's a very, very powerful component. So first of all, it's really a 3-week course, not really a 10. There's a 4th week, but the 4th week is kind of bringing it all together and such. So the real sort of practical stuff happens in the 3. So the first one is about sort of your machinery and how to control it. The next one is about how stimuli in the environment can either be used when we do it mindfully to reduce our anxiety states, or how other things kick them up. So we talked about the news, for example, a little bit. Let me mention, my favorite little news suggestion to people that'll make sense when you watch the course, which is karaoke. So many of our TVs now, smart TVs, have karaoke options. And if you especially have a family around and you're bored, one of the best things to do is karaoke, because it'll do two things. Singing, which is really good for flooding our body with endorphins that kind of fight stress, and usually laughing, because you usually laugh at each other because somebody's not the best singer in the world or whatnot. And if you can have that spirit to it, combining singing and laughing, as a way, like turn off the news and do that for an hour, very, very powerful in that way. So I talk about that. I talk about social interactions, things like that in the second chapter. And then in the third chapter, we focus mostly just on isolation. So now that we're in this world of isolation, how can we take the things we talked about in the first two chapters and kind of structure an existence that we can live with mentally, that we can actually, feel like, okay, I could live this way for a period of time. We're all worried how long we're going to have to live. But I shouldn't fiddle with things while I'm talking. Those are the three big concepts: your machinery, the environment around, and the effect it has, and then how can we take what we learn and mindfully structure our existence in isolation. Yeah.
We're just getting to the close of this. I have a couple of things that I just wanted to explore with you as well. Let's say we are in our self-isolation with a small group, whether it's family, boaters with their crew. Often captains are responsible for the well-being. If you recognize the signs of issues exhibiting themselves in the people that you're close to, how can you deal with that? How, you go in there and say, what's the matter with you? Hit him over the head. Take Steve's course.
Yeah.
Is there some strategies maybe that we could be more sensitive about how we approach that, how we bring these people along to a place of well-being?
Yeah. I mean, for the anxiety one, we're kind of lucky. It's a weird way to use the term lucky, but we all kind of feel it now, and we all kind of understand other people feeling it. And so it's a little less like, how come you're feeling that way? It's more like, yeah, I'm there too, but I'm whatever. But you can learn to manage it. That would be my first sort of message to someone dealing with anxiety. Hey, this is just your machinery in this fight, flee response. You can manage that. And yeah, there are many resources for doing that. My course would be one, but there could be all sorts of things online. The more worrisome part for me is when you see the anxiety rolling into depression. And so I sometimes say the distinction between these is anxiety is like your body screaming at you, do something. Depression is your body screaming at you, don't bother, it won't matter anyway. And so once you're at that point, a process we sometimes call developing learned helplessness, where you can start to believe that nothing you will do will make any difference. Why bother? That's depression. And when you see that, that's a very scary place. That's a scary path for a person to be going down, because depression is what leads to suicide and many other bad situations. The key to the difference between those two is that sense of control, a person having some sense that, what I'm doing is making a difference. And so that's why, I like to highlight for people, like, even when you think about isolation, don't think about it as we're cowering away, we're hiding from this disease that's out there, and if we're lucky, it'll never get to us. But rather think of it more like we have this hospital staff on the front lines fighting this thing. It is super, super powerful. If we do our part, we can at least reduce the power it has. And so by staying home and whatever, that is how we're contributing. We are having a positive effect. And then if you can combine that maybe with, let's reach out to some people I know who may need some social support right now, then again, that's a very positive effect. So I think, if someone's going down that route, if you can find ways, little levers where they can feel like they're doing something that matters, that's what will sort of stave them away from the depression line. And that's what I worry about.
Yeah. Wonderful. Those are great tips. There's so many other things that we could talk about. And I do appreciate that you've got lots of things to do. And I am thankful for people like you who've developed practical courses like this. I will continue, and I will promise to get past the sleeping part. But we'll put all the links to the course. Is there anywhere else that you would like to highlight that people can get some help?
Well, I mean, as within the course structure, there is a discussion forum, which is actually very powerful, by the way. A lot of these learning environments, if you view it as you're joining a community of learners, so this isn't just you in the course, there's a bunch of other people, and there's already some rich discussion going on and a lot of sharing of various other resources. So quite often, if there's a specific issue you have, you can raise it in the discussion forum. I will kind of jump in, but it's all over the board because some people are isolated alone, and that's horrible. And other people are isolated with their 6 children, 4 of them teenagers, and that's horrible. But they're very different kind of coping situations you need in those 2 contexts. And so often it's good to just openly say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. And you'll probably immediately find somebody else who's in a very similar situation. And if you guys can start sharing tips with each other, that's the best of everything because you're getting that social connection and that sharing of information. And, you know, I sometimes feel like that parent of a teenager knows more about those challenges than I, as a psychology prof, do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask your forgiveness because I am going to link to a video of you and your band playing at a concert, and you can see how music does have therapy. I think I listened to it for 45 minutes before we came on. It's relaxing. It was also funny.
Funny, I buy. Cool.
Dr. Joordens, thank you so much for joining us today. Great practical tips. It would be wonderful to touch base with you in a month. And as you understand too, the impacts of a longer period and some of the feedback you're getting through the people on your course and your community, love to be able to reconnect with you again.
That sounds great, Bruno. I'd appreciate that. That'd be fun.
We will be posting links and give you access to this course. I can highly recommend it. I understand it. And if I can, I think everybody can. If you have any ideas for future episodes, or if there's somebody that you would like to see on the Green Boater TV, please leave your comments in the section below. Until next time, stay safe on the water and try to do your part to help create the ocean you love. We'll talk to you soon.